Hey travelers, Mag and I here on day 304 of our trip around the United States. We have finished the southeast part of Idaho, and now we're ready to take on the western side of the state over the next 3 days. For our first day, we're gonna have 200 miles to cover, working our way northwest through the Mackay Reservoir and all the way out to finish our day in Lowman. Today only has 200 miles because most of it is supposed to be hiking out in the Craters of the Moon National Monument. However, I never really thought that was going to happen. It's definitely not a dog-friendly park, and with the way Aichan's feeling now, I'm doubling down on we're skipping that. So we're gonna fly through the miles today relatively quickly. For tomorrow, we have 335 miles to cover. Most of our time for that day is going to be spent in Boise, and really I expect to be able to do that by the end of today. We're gonna take our time and tour the state capitol because, as you know, we love to tour the state capitals, and then we'll be working our way through the miles all the way north through the state until we hit Grangeville. Once we get to Grangeville, that's where our third day will begin. We'll have 250 miles to cover through that northern part of Idaho to finish off what we have remaining in that portion of the state. Our route's gonna bring us all the way up through Moscow, and once we get there, that's where we're gonna spend almost the entirety of our third day because there's a ton of virtuals in Moscow that we wanna see, so we're definitely expecting to get a great tour of the city. Now, even though this route has us going through the mountains, because we're cutting all of those DeLorme pages off, we are avoiding the worst of the mountain driving. Hands down. I can't wait to see what this part of Idaho has in store for us, because if it's even half as good as Southeast Idaho was, it is going to be fantastic. So let's get out there together and see what it has in store. Come on, let's go. Our day begins just north of the Craters of the Moon National Monument Reserve at Honey's overpriced, dry, dusty, bumpy, rarely level field. This is an extremely unique campground run by Scar, who is a dog lover through and through. With our interest piqued by an adventure lab, we decided to come check this place out for ourselves. The stages of the adventure lab take us on a very short tour of the camp. From one vehicle to the next, we learn about the dogs that were important to not only Scar, but his friends and guests as well. Each of the buses is painted to look like a dog, one of them having Aichan's coloring on its ears and eye spot, which really made me smile. Each of these buses also features a photo of the dog it is named for and modeled after. While each of the buses on this campground may not feature the same amenities that you're used to seeing on a 5-star hotel, they give you something else that you're going to be hard-pressed to find anywhere else. Personality. And not just in the living spaces, but also from the host. During your time here, you can expect to spend several hours around the campfire, laughing, joking, telling stories, and watching your dogs play and enjoy the dog park. With more than a little coaxing, I was eventually able to get Aichan back on the road again. Our route out of Arco carries us northwest along Highway US 93, climbing through the Big Lost River Valley, past Mackay, and beyond the highest points in the state. Gazing off at the mountains in the distance, obscured by clouds and capped by snow, our decision to skip out on the DeLorme pages across these mountain ranges is reinforced. Just south of Chalice, we hang a sharp left and hop onto State Highway 75 at its northern terminus. Designated as an Idaho Scenic Byway, this 160-mile route follows the Salmon River, providing a beautiful view along its entire length, winding and twisting its way through the Bitterroot Mountains in the Salmon Chalice National Forest. Most of this route looks much the same as it did when Lewis and Clark first stepped foot on the Idaho side of the Lost Trail Pass. We were completely enamored with this drive right up until the point where we blew a tire. Then we quickly needed to limp our way into Boise to get it changed. With minimal delay, we were able to get our issue resolved and then begin our tour of the most populated city in the state with about 250,000 people living here. The roots of this city can be traced all the way back to the 1820s, when French fur trappers first set traps in the area where Boise now lies. In stark contrast to the high desert landscape, they spotted the tree-lined Boise River, which they named Wooded River, or La Rivière Boise. After the long, arduous journey through the desolate Snake River Plain, the sight of the lush trees in the distance provided welcome relief to travelers on the trail. It is easy to see why this city quickly adopted the nickname of the City of Trees. It quickly became the center for trade between the native inhabitants in the area and the new people arriving from the west. There had once been a Fort Boise west of this area near the confluence with the Snake River at the Oregon border, but it was abandoned in the 1850s. Massacres along the Oregon Trail prompted the Army to re-establish a fort in the area during the Civil War in 1863. As an important staging area for the journey to Idaho City, the fort grew rapidly, and within 2 years it had become the capital of the state in place of Lewiston. Our one absolute must-do stop in the city is a visit to the Freak Alley Art Gallery. Highlighted by a virtual reward that was published in the release of the first wave of new virtuals in 2017, the Freak Alley Gallery is the Northwest's largest open-air, multi-artist mural gallery. Wedged between 8th and 9th Street in Bannock and Idaho and downtown Boise, the Freak Alley Gallery provides a public forum for visual artists to create and display their art beyond the traditional gallery setting. The tradition of adding murals to the walls in this hidden-away alley began in 2002 with the first drawing created by Colby Akers on the back alley doorway of Moon's Cafe. It was not long at all before creative works of art radiated out from that doorway to spread throughout the entire alleyway. Now, in the summer, each year, a large event is held in which artists and community members are invited out to continue to transform this space. The ever-growing, constantly changing works of art to be found here ensures a unique experience for any visitor coming to the Freak Alley Gallery. As expected, with the change in our timeline, having cut out the Craters of the Moon National Monument and Preserve, Boise became the end of our day. But we still had enough time on our side to go chase down a few creative hides. At first, I thought this tree was watching me, but upon closer inspection, I realized that it was just watching the geocache hidden high up in its branches. And whenever I catch wind of a geocache hidden at a little free library, I just can't help myself but to come have a look. While these are normally pretty easy finds, that is not always the case. Sometimes they can be rather creative. And that creativity could be found in full swing here at the Ground Zero, not only with the little free library, but also the little free puzzle box, which is something I have never encountered up until now. Now, I'm sure a lot of you out there have seen plenty of little free libraries, but have you ever seen a little free puzzle box? Now that's a pretty ingenious idea. Although the risk of getting a puzzle out of there and getting 999 pieces put in and then find out you're missing one piece, that might make you crazy. At least this puzzle lets you know that's the case. So if you're gonna take it on, hey, there's 5 pieces that aren't just gonna happen in there. Departing the city of Boise, first thing the next morning, our very first stop is in Horseshoe Bend, the largest city in rural Boise County with a population of about 700 people. First known as Warnersville, when it was established in 1862 as a settlement to mine for gold, the name was changed in 1867 after the gold rush had quieted. Our road north for the morning would continue to carry us deeper into the Boise National Forest. Created on July 1st of 1908 as a breakaway from the Sawtooth National Forest, the Boise National Forest covers more than 2.2 million acres of land. This vast forested landscape is broken down to and managed as 5 different sections by the U.S. Forest Service, including Cascade, Emmett, Idaho City, Loman, and Mountain Ranger Home. In total, there are more than 9,600 miles of streams and rivers, and 1,500 acres of lakes and reservoirs to be discovered as you climb up to more than 9,000 feet. If there was one geocache that Aicha and I could both count on being able to find along this stretch of National Forest Road, were the birdhouses. It seemed like no matter where we chose to stop, there was another birdhouse in the distance, calling to us, begging us to come over and add our names to the logbook. And of course, since all of these birdhouses were easily accessible from the car, we simply weren't about to pass up on the opportunity. The fun part of each of these hides was figuring out how to open up the container so that we could get to the geocache hidden inside. But as it turns out, this was just a bit of a warm-up for the cold road ahead. By the time we had crossed north out of the Boise National Forest into the Payette National Forest, it had begun to snow down on us. If not for the feeling of cold snowflakes sliding under my collar and melting against my skin, I would almost not be able to believe my eyes. Isn't it already May? Aren't we right in the middle of spring? When are we going to be done with this kind of weather? Fortunately, as we began our descent from near He Devil Peak at over 9,000 feet, the snow began to fade away in our rear view mirror. With visibility and driving conditions back in our favor, it made it that much easier to appreciate the beautiful views over the Salmon River and the many waterfalls to be spotted along the way. Just southwest of the city of Grangeville, we come across the White Bird Battlefield at the Nez Pierce National Historic Park. On June 17th of 1877, this became the site of the opening battle of the Nez Perce War between the Nez Perce Indians and the United States. Nearly 20 years before this battle took place, in 1855, the U.S. government signed a treaty with the Nez Perce establishing a reservation in their ancestral homelands. Not too long after the establishment of this treaty, gold was discovered within the Nez Perce Indian Reservation. In pursuit of the wealth, the U.S. government forced another treaty on the Nez Perce, reducing the size of the reservation by as much as 90%. The new boundaries were mostly ignored, but things began to boil over when the government attempted a forced relocation. Our escape from the snow, it would seem, had been short-lived, as by the time we reached Grangeville, the county seat of Idaho County, it had already started coming down on us once again. Compared to what we had to deal with recently though, this is nothing. So we just continued to geocache our way through this city of about 3,200 people. While here, we also learned about the mammoth bones that had been discovered in the nearby Tolo Lake. Those bones were the inspiration behind the one geocache here on our target list, a 14-foot high, 17-foot long replica mammoth they rebuilt in the middle of town. Still traversing the lands of the Nez Perce Reservation, we come upon the small town of Craigmont, with a population of about 500 people. Named for Colonel William Craig, a fur trapper who'd hung up his hat to settle in the area, the city can trace its roots all the way back to 1895 when the Nez Perce Reservation was opened to white settlement. By 1920, two small communities that had been established merged to become Craigmont. Despite the reservation covering a sprawling 770,000 acres, the Nez Perce only own about 12% of the land. Much of it is dedicated to farmlands, with the Nez Perce leasing lands to both farmers and loggers alike. The reservation is a very rural landscape with very few people in sight and a lot of natural beauty. We bring our second day to a close in the city of Orofino, the county seat of Clearwater County, with a population of about 3,100 people. The original name of the town was actually two words, Oro and Fino, which applied to the gold mine camp that had been established here in 1861. And while there may not be much gold left to be found in this area, there is still plenty of treasure to be had in the form of geocaches. With a successful prospect under our belt, Ichan and I called it a day. For our last day exploring the northern reaches of Idaho, we begin our day in Lewiston, the county seat of Nez Perce County, with a population of about 34,000 people. Located on the confluence of the Snake and Clearwater rivers, this town was founded in 1861 in the wake of the gold rush that began in the nearby city of Pierce. It had first been incorporated by the Washington Territorial Legislature in January of 1863, but then, in March of that same year, it became the first capital of the newly created Idaho Territory. Its tenure was short-lived, however, with the capital moving to Boise on December 7th of 1864. Right out of the city, we immediately begin to roll into the farmland hills of the countryside once again, in pursuit of a couple of virtuals. As is often the case though, it was a geocache that we hadn't targeted at all that ended up being the most fun we would have all morning long. The cache that we had decided to detour out here for was watched over by these friendly horses. Ichan could hardly believe that I was going to get to go say hi to each of them. I've been muggled at a geocache before, but this is definitely a new level for me. Hey guys, this one right there. Right there. There we go. That's this one. That's the geocache. We found it. Good job. Thank you for all your help. You guys are awesome. You want some too? Before lunchtime even hits, we are approaching the end of our time spent here in Idaho as we come into the city of Moscow, the county seat of Lata County, with a population of about 25,000 people. Much of that population can be attributed to this being home of the University of Idaho, the state's land-grant institution. First named Paradise Valley, the name was changed to Moscow by 1875. Having risen to the top and completed our tour of the northern parts of Idaho, we now look down from the top of the Lewiston Hill overlook. Gazing down upon the Snake and Clearwater confluences between Clarkston and Lewiston, we contemplate our next move heading into Washington. All right. That is going to do it for our climb into the mountains of Idaho. We began 3 days ago in Arco, and from there we made our way northwest, enjoying the beautiful drive through the forested mountains right up until the point we blew our tire. I hadn't decided whether or not I was going to drop down into Boise then or later, but the blown tire made the decision for us. So we came on into the Capitol area, we got to see the Capitol building and the Freak Alley Art Gallery, which was a fantastic place to walk through and look at all of the works of art that make that alleyway just such a unique place in the downtown Boise, Idaho. Once we woke up, the next morning we began our climb back north into the mountains again, passing through Horseshoe Bend and continuing through Grangeville, Lewiston, Moscow, and finishing up in Tenst. We're not quite done with Idaho, however. We still have one county that we skipped, Jim, because we're going to be seeing some friends there in a couple of days. But for now, we'll be spending the next few days winding our way along the borders between Idaho, Washington, and Oregon as we make our way back down toward Boise once again. Thank you for joining us on this drive into the far northern parts of Idaho. I hope you have enjoyed the beauty of this state as much as we have, because it has simply been amazing making this drive up here. Like this video, subscribe, stay tuned for updates, and we'll see you out on the trails.